Good day, everybody. This is Yin Yang in California with morsels of a thought number 1524. I can't see the top left corner of my screen, but I believe it's still there. Okay, it's good. All right. So we are on Words and Wisdom Wednesday, and we were reading a story last week about uh about. Susie was very fond of her stepfather at first, but when she came of school age, mixed more with the older children, and heard laughing contemptuous remarks about him, the frank and devouring egotism of childhood made her ashamed of her affection. This is about the saint, the living saint. Ashamed of him, with his uncouth gait, his mouth always sagging open, his stammering, ignorant speech, which the other children amused themselves by mocking. Susie knew this and loved him by stealth for it, but the intolerable sensitive vanity of her 12 years made her wretched to be seen in public with him. Divining this, he ceased going with her to school picnics and Sunday school parties, where he had been a most useful pack animal, and, dressing her in her best with his big calloused hands, watched her from the window join a group of the other children. Susie began to grow very pretty and saucy and wilful, and to have beaux come to see her. The old woman exulted openly over Lem's helpless anxiety. He was quite gray now, although not yet 45, and so stooped that he passed for an old man. He owned a little farm. His flock of sheep was the largest in the township. His flock of sheep was the largest in the township. Remember, he killed a wolf, thinking he killed somebody's dog, and he always felt ashamed that he had done it, but the others were admir- adm- ad- what's the word for it? They admired him. They were really full of admiration for him. He owned a little farm. His flock of sheep was the largest in the township, because he killed off wolves. And Susie was expected to make a good marriage in spite of her antecedents. And then Frank Gridley's oldest son, Ed, came back from business college and with store clothes and city hats and polished tan shoes and began idling about calling on the girls. One night in County Fair week, Susie, who had gone to the fair with a crowd of girlfriends, was not at home at 10 o'clock. Lem, sitting in his doorway and watching the clock, heard the approach of the laughing, singing straw ride in which she had gone with a long breath of relief. But the big hay wagon did not stop at his gate. He called after it in a harsh voice and was told that Ed Gridley and she went off to the hotel to get supper. He said he'd bring her home later. Lem went out to the barn, hitched up the faster of his two heavy plow horses, and drove from his house to Woodville 8 miles and uphill in 45 minutes. When he went into the hotel, the clerk told him that the two he sought had had supper served in a private room. Lem ascertained which room and broke the door in with one heave of his shoulders. Susie sprang up from the disordered supper table and ran to him like a frightened child, clinging to him desperately and crying out that Ed scared her so. It's all right now, Susie, he said gently, not looking at the man. Papa's come to take you home. The man felt his dignity wounded. He began to protest boisterously and to declare that he was ready to marry the girl. Now, this instant, if you choose. Lem put one arm about Susie. I didn't come to make you marry her. I came to keep you from doing it, he said, speaking clearly for once in his life. Susie shan't marry a hound that'd do this. And as the other advanced threateningly on him, he struck him a great blow across the mouth that sent him unconscious to the ground. Now we're starting with the part we stopped at. Then Lem went out, paid for the broken lock, and drove home with Susie behind the foundered plow horse. The next spring, her engagement to Bronson Perkins was announced, though everybody said they didn't see what use it was for folks to get engaged that couldn't ever get married. Mr. Perkins, Bronson's father, was daft, not enough to send him to the asylum, but so that he had to be watched all the time to keep him from doing himself a hurt. He had a horrid way, I remember, of lighting matches and holding them up to his bared arm until the smell of burning flesh went sickeningly through the house and sent someone in a rush to him. Of course, it was out of the question to bring a young bride to such a home. Apparently, there were years of waiting before them, and Susie was made of no stuff to endure a long engagement. As a matter of fact, they were married that fall, as soon as Susie could get her things ready. Lem told old Mr. Perkins Lem took old Mr. Perkins into the room Susie left vacant. Um, "'Twon't be much more trouble taking care of two old people than one," he explained briefly. That's interesting. Two old people. Oh, I get it. I get it. I get it. I get it. Okay. um, Ma'am Warren's comments on this action have been embalmed forever in the delighted memories of our people. We have a taste for picturesque and forceful speech. From that time, we always saw the lunatic and the bent shepherd together. The older man grew quieter under Lamb's care than he had been for years, and if he felt one of his insane impulses overtaking him, ran totteringly to grasp his protector's arm until, quaking and shivering, he was himself again. Lem used to take him up to the sheep pasture for the day sometimes. He liked it up there himself, he said, and maybe 'twould be good for Uncle High. He often reported with pride that the old man talked as sensible as anybody. Get him off where it's quiet. Indeed, when Mr. Perkins died 6 years later, we had forgotten that he was anything but a little queer, and he had known many happy, lucid hours with his grandchildren. Susie and Bronson had two boys, sturdy, hardy children, in whom Lem took the deepest, shyest pride. He loved to take them off into the woods with him and exulted in their quick intelligence and strong little bodies. Susie got into the way of letting him take a good deal of the care of them. It was Lem who first took alarm about the fall that little Frank had down the cellar stairs. He hurt his spine somehow. Our local doctor could not tell exactly how, and as the injury only made him limp a little, nobody thought much about it until he began to have difficulty in walking. Then Lem sent for a doctor from Rutland who, as soon as he examined the child, stuck out his lower lip and rubbed his chin ominously. He pronounced the trouble something with a long name which none of us had ever heard, and said that Frank would be a hopeless cripple if it were not cured soon. There was, he said, a celebrated doctor from Europe now traveling in this country who had a wonderful new treatment for this condition. But under the circumstances, he looked about the plain farm sitting room. He supposed that was out of the question. What did the doctor from foreign parts ask? Queried Bronson, and being informed of some of the customary prices for major operations, fell back hopeless. Susie, her pretty childish face drawn and blanched into a wan beauty, put her arms about her sick little son and looked at her stepfather. He had never failed her. He did not fail her now. He sold the land he had accumulated field by field. He sold the great flock of sheep, every one of which he could call by name. He mortgaged the house over the protesting head of his now bedridden mother. He sold the horse and cow and the very sticks of furniture from the room where Susie had grown up and where the crazy grandfather of Susie's children had known of peaceful old age and death. Little Frank was taken to New York, to the hospital, to have the great surgeon operate on him. He is there yet, almost completely recovered and nearly ready to come home. Back in Hillsboro, Lem now began life all over again, hiring out humbly to his neighbors and only stipulating that he should have enough free time to take care of his mother. 3 weeks ago, she had her last stroke of paralysis and, after lying speechless for a few days, passed away, grim to the last by the expression in her fierce old eyes. The day after the funeral, Lem did not come to work as he was expected. We went over to his house. We went over to his house and found, to our consternation, that he was not out of bed. "Be you sick, Lem?" asked my uncle. He looked at us over the bedclothes with his old, foolish, apologetic smile. "Kind of lazy, I guess," he whispered, closing his eyes. The doctor was put out by the irregularity of the case. "I can't make out anything really the trouble," he said. "Only the wheels don't go round as fast as they ought. Call it failing heart action if you want a label." The wheels ran more and more slowly until it was apparent to all of us that before long they would stop altogether. Susie and Bronson were in New York with little Frank, so that Lem's care during the last days devolved on the haphazard services of the neighbors. He was out of his head most of the time, though never violent, and all through the long nights lay flat on his back, looking at the ceiling with bright blank eyes, driving his ox team, skidding logs, plowing in stony ground, and remembering to favor the off horse whose wind wasn't good, planting, hoeing, tending his sheep, and teaching obstinate lambs to drink. Now, I believe he was in what they now have, a really common name for, and he had lost his motivation to live because he had sold off everything he had lived for just for this little boy for the operation. So now he had very little purpose to get out of bed. He used quaint, coaxing names for these, such as a mother uses for her baby. He was up in the mountain pasture a good deal, we gathered, and at night, from his constant mention of how bright the stars shone, and sometimes, when he was in evident pain, his delusion took the form that Susie or the little boys had gone up with him and got lost in the woods. I was on duty the night he died. We thought a change was near because he had lain silent all day, and we hoped he would come to himself when he awoke from this stupor. Near midnight he began to talk again, and I could not make out at first whether he was still wandering or not. "Hold on hard, Uncle High," I heard him whisper. A spoon fell out of my hand and clattered against a plate. He gave a great start and tried to sit up. "Yes, mother, coming," he called hoarsely, and then looked at me with his own eyes. "I must have forgot about mother's being gone," he apologized sheepishly. I took advantage of this lucid interval to try to give him some medicine the doctor had left. "Take a swallow of this," I said, holding the glass to his lips. "What's it for?" he asked. "It's a heart stimulant," I explained. "The doctor said if we could get you through tonight, you have a good chance." His face drew together in grotesque lines of anxiety. "Little Frank worse?" "Oh, no, he's doing finely." "Susie all right?" "Why, yes," I said wonderingly. "Nothing the matter with her other boy?" "Why, no, no," I told him. "Everybody's all right. Here, just take this down." He turned away his head on the pillow and murmured something I did not catch. When I asked him what he said, he smiled feebly as in deprecation of his well-known ridiculous ways. "I'm just as much obliged to you," he said, "but if everybody's all right, I guess I won't have any medicine." He looked at me earnestly. I'm real tired," he said. It came out in one great breath, apparently his last, for he did not move after that, and his ugly, slack-mouthed face was at once quite still. Its expression made me think of the time I had seen it as a child by lantern light as he looked down at the newborn lamb on his breast. Oh, I want to cry. This man was truly, truly a saint. He had nothing for himself. He never thought of himself. He always thought of other people. He raised a child that was a sort of illegitimate birth from a woman that he had just married who was pregnant by another boy. And he raised her all his own. He made her a beautiful woman. and he took care of her grandchildren. He sold off everything to take care of his grandson, step grandson. That's a saint. And he died because he had no more motivation to live. He had nothing else to live for. He wanted everybody to be all right. And when he was sure of that, he said, I'm I'm real tired. And then he left. That's so full of life. Golly. Oh, I really want to cry. I just feel this was supposed to be a true story, too. This woman that wrote it said that she knew this man. And this is in the section on perseverance. Now, this man was perseverant, all right, in memory of LHW. This is a story about This is a story of a lifetime of struggle made noble by compassion, responsibility, work, and a host of other virtues. Vermont writer Dorothy Canfield Fisher, 1879 to 1958, said that as a child she knew the protagonist of this story, a New England farmer born to a hard life, and one day she realized he was a saint. Wow. So this is from William J. Bennett, The Book of Virtues, and we are going to go into the Tao, which I've been putting into the subheader forever, ages, and haven't been reading from. I had actually marked up a whole bunch of sentences I wanted to read, and here, it's not in here. Yeah. He who is in harmony with the Tao, says Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu wrote the Tao Te Ching. Tao means way. De means virtue. Jing means scripture or writing. Lao Tzu was the man who wrote it. He lived thousands of years ago. Number 55. He who is in harmony with the Tao is like a newborn child. Its bones are soft, its muscles are weak, but its grip is powerful. It doesn't know about the union of male and female, yet its penis can stand erect, so intense is its vital power. It can scream its head off all day, yet it never becomes hoarse, so complete is its harmony. The master's power is like this. He lets all things come and go effortlessly without desire. He never expects results, thus he is never disappointed. He is never disappointed, thus his spirit never grows old. This is interesting. What it is it's a lot like all of the philosophies we've been reading about, like the Stoics, for example. For example, the master's power is like this. He lets all things come and go effortlessly. Now, that is just like Marcus Aurelius as well, without desire. He never expects results. In other words, 无以练功,无以受益, which means you never expect results and you unexpectedly gain benefits. So when you are practicing Qigong or when you're practicing your virtue, which is the right thing to do, then you will find that if you don't expect results, you will be surprised at the results you do get. Now, this show is all about morsels of a thought, of acquired wisdom. And the definition of knowing what to do is wisdom. However, if you haven't done it, then you haven't got the virtue part done. If you've done it, then that is making virtue. So we want to bring more virtue into this world, is what I think. I'll read some more. Sitting up in here. Sorry. Those who know don't talk. Those who talk don't know. I need to give you an example of yesterday. I was once in the politics of my building, and there was a barbecue in the backyard that belonged to the tenant association, but since the previous president left with a lot of things, he didn't say to me, that barbecue belongs to us. Only somebody told me the chairs and the tables that look like such and such belong to the tenant association. So I didn't know when I was having a meeting with the property manager who said, we're going to throw away the barbecue. I didn't know he was talking about a $500 item. And the reason he was going to throw it away was the fire codes were not going to allow that we use them. So they should have paid us for it, but they didn't. And the two other people who were at that meeting are now long past. So I'm the only person that is still here, that is in the building, that was at that meeting. That property manager has also moved on. And so yesterday, the current president said, oh, they did this without my knowing. And I'm thinking, you weren't even living in this building. I was there. I'm the one who should be saying what you're saying, and you're trying to lie to me that you were there. I didn't say anything. I managed to do the same thing as a stoic without even realizing it. I just said, I'm not going to fret over it. I'm just going to correct her. And I said, well, I was there, and at that time, so and so said they were going to throw it away. And since the other so and so had not told me it belonged to us, I simply let it go by without asking for the money. And she said, well, I asked for the money. And I said, yes, that's because I told your husband about it later on, and I told him to make sure to tell you about it. So this woman knows how to lie. So anyway, number 56. Those who know don't talk. Those who talk don't know. Close your mouth. Block off your senses. Blunt your sharpness. Untie your knots. Soften your glare. Settle your dust. This is the primal identity. Be like the Tao. It can't be approached or withdrawn from, benefited or harmed, honored or brought into disgrace. It gives itself up continually. That is why it endures. That is why it endures. Okay, so we're done with our virtue lesson for today. Lessons 3 there are. And we did the Tao Te Ching, we did the Book of Virtues. I'll talk to you tomorrow with the rules. Okay, old Kinderhook. Bye-bye.